Okay, thanks, Nina. So welcome everybody to our workshop for our climate resilient strategy for California agriculture. Um, if you're here, you've probably seen that we have our draft out on our website for your review and perusal. And we're really excited today to give you an overview and get into some of the details. And if you have had a chance to delve into it, perhaps you have some comments that you want to share with us, and we'll have time for that today too. Um, okay, next slide, please. So our agenda for today, or our objectives, are to share an overview of our climate resilience strategy for California. We call it the RSA for short. To gather input to build an inclusive strategy that represents the needs of the agricultural community, which we know is very vast and covers 400 crops and commodities in California, and together that the input from these workshops will be incorporated into our final resilience strategy. Next slide, please. So the agenda for this meeting is really simple. It's just to introduce ourselves. I'll start. I'm Virginia Jameson. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate and Working Lands at the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And I'll pass it to you, Nina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Bingham. I'm a senior environmental scientist working on all things climate related at the Department of Food and Agriculture. And I'll pass it to Kelly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley Rada, and I'm with Blue Point Planning, and we are a consulting firm that is helping CDFA with the development and outreach of this strategy. So excited to be here today.
Thanks, Nina and Haley. So next we'll go over the context and the purpose of this resilience strategy. Then we'll go through an overview of the strategy and give you suggestions and kind of orient you on how to read it so you understand how the document works. We'll go through a set of equity principles that we've developed, and then we'll talk about next steps, and that includes a public comment. So without further ado, let's go on to the next slide. Over to you, Haley.
Great. So for this webinar, we're going to be using a tool called Mentimeter. So basically, you can either just scan this QR code with your phone, or you can go to menti.com and enter this code, or I'll put a URL in the chat. And basically, this just allows us to ask you some poll questions here and there throughout the workshop so that you can all, provide feedback. Additionally, the chat should be open to all, so you should be able to put your comments or questions in there. So feel free to use that as you see fit. So if you all want to just click on one way or another, and if you can't ever, access this, just feel free to put it in the chat. So you can either do it again through the QR code, through menti.com in the code, or just that URL that I put in the chat, and the Menti and the code will stay on top. So we just wanted to start by asking if any of you have had the chance to read the Resilience Strategy for California Agriculture, which we're calling the RSA. So no shame in any answer, we're just trying to gauge everybody's familiarity.
Yeah, it took us a long time to write it, so we're sure it took a long time to read it.
Right, so we kind of have people across the board. Skimmed it is probably the winner here.
Fair enough.
One more minute to see.
Yeah, we also know it covers a lot of topics, and not every single topic is going to be relevant for every single person. So it makes sense to pick and choose for folks who have limited time what you want to read.
All right. And so then our next question.
Okay, shall we go to the next one?
Is what are you most interested in getting out of today's workshop? So are you hoping to just generally learn about what's in the document, dive into a specific chapter and learn a little bit more, share your thoughts about what's missing, or something else? And if it's something else, if you want to actually, if it's something else or dive into one chapter, if you want to put that in the comments about, what you're looking for.
Okay, great. I think that we can handle this.
If
Okay.
whoever put they want to dive into one chapter, if you want to put in the chat what chapter you're most interested in, we could maybe take a little bit extra on that one. And if somebody would just put something in the chat just to make sure we can see it, that'd be great. Or keep us moving.
Oh,
Great.
thank you. Chapter 4. Okay, cool. Okay. So now we're going to dive into some background for, why we started doing this to begin with. You can go to the next slide. Okay. So in 2022, many of you may remember that CDFA released a document called Ag Vision for the Next Decade. And Ag Vision is a vision setting process that first started in 2008 under the leadership of the State Board of Food and Agriculture. And it has since undergone several updates. And this is the most recent one that we have the cover on this page here. The document was formulated with input from the state board, a task force that it created to manage it, with roundtable discussions and stakeholders, including farmers and ranchers, processors, supply chain partners, small and underserved producers, nonprofit representatives, and discussions with other state agencies. So like all those folks got together and identified key priorities that went into this document. And the first one of those priorities was to foster climate smart, resilient, and regenerative food systems. So this climate resilience strategy is designed to present a comprehensive picture of what is needed to meet this priority and build resilience in agriculture. It's our intention that the document be a one-stop shop for understanding the challenges, state actions, and work needed to build resilience across all elements of agriculture. In the past, if you wanted to know kind of what was happening, you'd have to go to a ton of different state agency websites and documents. And so we're trying to create a place where you can see what's going on all in one spot. Okie dokie. Next slide, please. So the climate resilience strategy tries to highlight the climate-related challenges related to agriculture, the policies and actions across state government around climate and agriculture. It tries to identify areas of opportunity for future action, and it explores connections with partners, including local and federal initiatives. And then again, it provides equity principles to evaluate and improve access to state projects, programs, and policies. And there's more stuff in there too. We're going to have some cool case studies and things in the final draft. So we're excited to share that with you. One thing I wanted to say about this is that we know that there are things that we missed and things we didn't get right. And so we are very humbly asking for your input and telling us what could be better, what things you think agriculture needs to be resilient. And we're just really looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, next slide, please. So we have designed the strategy to hopefully be appealing to a number of audiences. That includes, of course, our agricultural community, farmers and ranchers. It also includes tribal governments and entities, our nonprofit and business partners who support agriculture, the general public, our state's legislature, our state agency partners, so they all can see what's going on too, as well as universities and research institutions that also feed into ag climate resiliency. So yeah, we really view this as an opportunity to reflect the needs of the agricultural community and provide actionable strategies to nonprofits and business partners who provide support services and just really get the word out about what's happening and what is needed. Next slide, please. So for those of you who haven't been following this process, or for those of you who have and could use a little reminder, just to provide some background on where we've been before today. We started back in spring of 2024 with CDFA researching potential content and presenting the initial list to our science advisory panel that we have. And then we took their feedback, went back and did some more research, and then we followed that up with a 2-day informational session, again through the science advisory panel. That's a public meeting that happens a little bit more often than quarterly, about 5 times a year. And during that time, we heard from the panel and the public on topics that they would like to see included, and heard from experts on various topics. Based on that information that we got, we started drafting the strategy, and we were able to circulate an early draft for review by our state agency partners about a year ago as of now. That was important because, again, we are trying to capture what's happening across the different agencies, and so it was important to us that we do outreach to them and make sure that we were representing their programs correctly. And so we got their feedback. We made a bunch of edits, including adding additional chapters and sections. And then we also entered into a contract with Blue Point Planning, or Haley is here representing. And then in the spring, we conducted further public listening sessions. Maybe some of you were at those. And then we used the information received from those listening sessions to inform a second round of interagency review to produce the draft for public comment that is now accessible to you all. So it is our hope and dream to finish this thing up in the next few months. And so we're being a little bit vague about the timeline here because everything always seems to take longer than we planned, but we're really crossing our fingers for like early 2026. Okie dokie. Next chapter, please.
Okay, so now we're going to help set the stage for the strategy. Next slide. Our agricultural industry is strong. It boasted $61.2 billion in sales in 2024, and our state's growers produce 1/3 of our nation's vegetables and 3/4 of our nation's fruits and nuts. We know that with our unique geography and climate, coupled with infrastructure and our innovative farmers and ranchers, really make California a specialty crop force where we produce over 400 different commodities. You're also all pretty aware that 90% of our state's growers come from family farms, and about 2/3 of our farms earn less than $100,000 annually. This means that although we have this incredibly strong agricultural industry, we also need to acknowledge the challenges and vulnerabilities that are facing our farmers and ranchers, and we want to work to uplift and support solutions. Next slide. So one major challenge we're all facing is climate change. Changing climate is driving a myriad of weather-related disasters. It includes periods of drought, extreme heat events, flooding, and wildfire, just to name a couple. But all of these weather-related disasters are resulting in increased pest pressure, heat stress on plants and animals and people, less water availability, degradation of our natural resources like soil and water and air, and also higher energy demands. Next slide. And these are just factors that are contributing to this increasingly challenging environment to produce food and fiber, where our yields are decreasing, production costs are very high, there's less land for agricultural production, and there's an increasing negative animal and human health effects. And this is really what's driving our urgency to work and making it clear that we need a cohesive path forward to support our agricultural industry and also our agricultural communities in building resiliency to the effects of climate change, and also drive towards meeting our goal of climate smart, resilient, and regenerative food systems. Next slide. The state also has overarching climate goals, including reaching carbon neutrality by 2045, reducing methane emissions to 40% below 2013 levels by 2030, and recently we've established a whole suite of nature-based solution targets. So this strategy will also highlight the ways in which our agricultural industry is contributing towards meeting those goals. Next slide. So in this next section, we're going to walk you through the organizational structure. I know many of you said you skimmed it or you're like kind of familiar with it. And so this will hopefully help when you dive back in, just understand a little bit more about how we're approaching this. Next slide. So we include an introduction to describe the purpose and need for this document, set the stage for what you'll find in the body of the document. Then the main body of the document is really organized into 3 overarching pillars that cover topics relevant to building agricultural resilience. So you see our 3 pillars listed there. And then we're going to finish the strategy with a conclusion that we really hope will recap the challenges we face and the actions needed to address these challenges, and also how we're going to utilize this strategy to stay on track and keep progress going. The conclusion is still to come. So if you open the strategy right now and scroll to the end, it'll say to come. And that's just because we're waiting on your input too to really help guide some of the way we conclude this work. Next slide. Okay, this is a big one. We're going to spend a little bit of time here, but we're also going to dive into each of these portions as we go forward. So this figure is showing you the overarching organization of the strategy and also the connections between our strategies and our actions. At the highest level, we've identified 3 themes needed for resilience, and these make up those pillars, the 3 overarching pillars I mentioned that you see in green, blue, and yellow at the top of this image here. Within these pillars is a suite of topics. These topics are the chapters of the body of our strategy, and we'll call them our key objectives. We will cover each one of these a little more in depth later on in this presentation. I know someone said they wanted to cover chapter 4, so we can pause a little bit there, but that's what we'll cover there. And then in each key objective, there's a set of strategies and actions to take to work towards fulfilling these objectives. And as we're compiling these actions, we notice that the actions could be grouped into cross-cutting categories we call goals. And these 5 goals describe the ways that we can work on resilience that'll look across all of our different objectives. So lastly, we're going to then present a set of equity principles and an accompanying set of questions that can be used to evaluate and improve access to our state projects and programs and policies and more. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's our key objectives and our 3 pillars. And we're going to take a closer look at these 3 pillars. Our first pillar is supporting a thriving and resilient food sector. And you can see this includes objectives on the economy, water, our workforce, animal health, and energy. Our next pillar is focused on the protection of natural systems that are critical to agriculture. This pillar covers land use, efforts to bolster biodiversity, and manage pest pressures. And then lastly, we finish with objectives that encourage the adoption of resilient agricultural practices. This pillar touches on practices we can do to improve our air quality, soil health, and boost the sustainability of our ranching and dairy operations. So now I think I'm going to turn it over to Haley really quick, and we'll go to the next slide.
Great. So when you're thinking about these big pillars and all of the key objectives throughout, are you feeling that these are capturing the big buckets of issues for California agriculture? So this one, you can slide the scale from not at all to completely. And on your phone or computer, you might have to click go to current slide to put it there. Okay, so we're seeing right now a little middling, maybe a little bit not capturing all of them. And I'd be curious, so it looks like maybe now we're kind of going more towards it generally is meeting the need. And I'd be curious if anyone who kind of thinks that something big is missing here, if they would put it in the chat. So great, Madison, thank you for that comment. If anyone else wants to add any big buckets or issues that they think are missing, we'd love to hear it. I'm going to keep us rolling. Oh, I have what if anything is missing here. So you could put it here. We might just put it in the chat at this point, unless anyone has anything else. Okay, access table markets, great. Yeah, if you could just put it in the chat of the workshop, that'd be great. And I'll keep going.
Okay, So we're going to dive into these goals for a second. Within each objective, we have these strategies and then the actions to take on these strategies. And each action listed in our strategy is grouped into one of these cross-cutting goals. I'm just going to talk through these goals really quick. Goal 1 is to increase and enhance technical assistance, to promote and share program information, and enable all farmers to utilize a broad suite of agricultural resources. Our second goal is to enhance program effectiveness by aligning program design, stakeholder engagement, tracking and monitoring, and evaluating on-the-ground requirements, including funding, eligibility, and access, all to spur the transition to climate-smart practices. Our third goal is to grow local, state, federal, tribal, academic partnerships, and internal collaborations to really increase the awareness, effectiveness, and expand reach and uptake of programs. Our fourth goal is to align and simplify policies and regulations, really to align across agencies and sectors, reduce barriers to implementation and participation. And then our last goal is goal 5, to demonstrate and invest in innovation and technology to scale climate smart agriculture. Next slide.
Great. So again, we are just looking for any feedback on if there are any other cross-cutting goals that should be considered throughout the strategy. We'll give you a minute just to type any answers into the Mentimeter here.
Maybe for this one, we could go back to the prior slide for a sec so people can read those again.
This is kind of a big question, so I don't, if no one has.
Also, if this becomes more clear as we go through this strategy, feel free to come back to this question, think about it, email us later. All good.
Okay, should we go on to the next slide?
Great.
Okay, so now we're going to look at the format of each chapter. There's 4 components to these chapters. First is a description of high-level background information and a summary of related challenges driven by climate change. We'll then cover our set of strategies and their associated actions to address these challenges. And then we finish the chapter with an implementation table. You'll see in this draft, it is in progress. We're definitely working right now on how best to convey information on progress towards these strategies and actions. And lastly, each topic will include a set of case studies, which can include deep dives on a specific challenge or exemplary resilience work. These also are not yet added in, and we're working on adding these in for the final draft. Next slide. Okay, so as you read the document, this is the way it's laid out on the page. And we just want to talk through the organizational features really quick so you can recognize them and key in. The chapters are sorted into 3 pillars. Each chapter has its own key objective, and in the chapter, there are strategies. So this is the orange header here that's reading 1.1, support financial risk reduction measures for farmers. One of the actions for that strategy is then listed below in blue, and it's reading 1.1.1, expand insurance options for specialty crops, especially to reduce risk from extreme weather-related losses. You can see which of these goals this particular action is sorted into with the little icon beneath the action title. So you can see that this is sorted into enhancing program effectiveness. Now we're going to step you through each chapter and provide the objective and a quick overview of some of the strategies and actions for these objectives, and I'll pass it to Virginia.
Awesome, thanks, Nina. Okay, so yeah, we're going to get into the meat of some of these a little bit. You know, behind each of these slides is a lot of pages and a lot of specific actions and strategies. So this is just going to be the overview. But basically, so for our first chapter / objective, it's fostering a robust and sustainable agricultural economy. We know this is a really tough time in farming right now, and so thinking about this is really front and center. We have seen the margins for farmers and ranchers get slimmer and slimmer, and climate change is only compounding economic challenges. So in this section, we are looking to see how we can leverage technology, tools, and innovations to help transform our food system and build resilience in the farm economy. We describe the drivers of financial pressures and the effects of climate change and explore how circular economies, procurement opportunities, voluntary markets, in addition to innovative tools and technologies, may help to bolster the farm economy and build in resilience to the effects of climate change. Next slide, please. Okay, so chapter 2 is focused on ensuring a water system for food system resilience in a hotter, drier future. So we could probably go into depth on this, but we know that there are many challenges related to drought, water availability, and a predicted overall diminished water supply going into the future because of different atmospheric changes and earlier snow runoff and things like that. And so this chapter is about how we can work on building sustainability and reliability in water use and access to ensure a resilient food system. The conveyance of water across the state, coupled with sustainable groundwater use, is critical to the success of California agriculture. Climate change presents a threat to the state's water resources and, by extension, our food system. And so this section describes the role of agriculture in ensuring the sustainability of California's water supply by protecting existing infrastructure and using water efficiently. We explore additional opportunities such as flood-managed aquifer recharge and also the continued development of our own water efficiency programs. Next slide, please. Chapter 3 is about supporting an agricultural workforce well-being and health. The objective is to improve on-farm safety and community well-being for California's ag workforce. As you all know, workforce is critical to enacting resilience-building actions, but our agricultural workforce, including farm workers, face worsening conditions as a result of climate change. Many of our agricultural communities are vulnerable to the effect of climate change. So to support the agricultural workforce health and well-being, we highlight state actions that uplift communities, build on-farm resilience plans, improve working conditions for farm workers, and facilitate routes to higher paying jobs for the existing highly skilled workforce. We also highlight the critical need for technical assistance and explore avenues for growing the technical assistance workforce through training and job opportunities. Next slide, please.
Okay, so dairy, livestock, and poultry are some of our top commodities in the state. However, these animals are very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Heat stress and increased disease pressure can lead to widespread animal mortality events. Here, our objective is to protect the health and well-being of our livestock and poultry from climate-related threats. This chapter drives home our mission of protecting animal health and welfare by covering current actions in agriculture and also exploring several opportunities to increase our preparedness and disaster response. And I want to pause here really quick because I do know that somebody wanted to do a deep dive on chapter 4. So if there's any specific comments you want to raise right here, or we want to spend a tiny bit more time, we can pause. Feel free to put your comment in the chat, raise your hand, put it in the question and answer.
I think I don't see Mariko who made that comment anymore.
Okay.
So she might have left, but hopefully we hear from her later on.
Hopefully she comes back. Okay, well, we'll move on. Next slide, please. And our last topic within supporting a thriving and resilient food sector pillar is energy. Energy is really critical input to every part of the food supply chain, from water conveyance to traditional on-farm equipment such as pumps and tractors and harvesters, to further down the supply chain with food processing warehouses and refrigerated trucks that carry food to stores and distribution centers. So the objective to advance resilient energy for farming operations is to increase energy efficiency and access to a reliable and clean energy grid for all agricultural operations. And to meet this objective, we propose strategies such as uplifting needs assessments and local planning and supporting energy efficient projects. Next slide.
Okay, so this is where we kind of get into that second pillar about protecting natural systems critical to agriculture. And the first chapter within this second pillar is conserving productive farmland. So as you all know, California's farmland is unique and highly productive. It's made up of alluvial soils and various microclimates that allow us to produce all these really great fruits and vegetables and specialty crops that in many cases grow nowhere else in the country. And of course, we have many competing land uses in our state. And since the state has been monitoring farmland loss in 1984, we've seen an average loss of between 40 and 50,000 acres of farmland per year. Now, AB 1757, which we referenced at the beginning of this presentation, did set a target for the conservation of about 12,000 acres of cropland per year through mechanisms like conservation easements. But we know there are other strategies that we can employ to conserve our farmlands. So this section will discuss the many planning and conservation strategies that can be employed, as well as efforts that are currently underway providing access to land for new and beginning farmers. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the next chapter is focused on pest management. We know that climate change is exacerbating pest pressures. For example, pests are less constrained by low temperatures that in the past would have limited their life cycles and geographic spread. We're also seeing more invasive species enter the state through new types of commerce, like people just ordering nursery products and food online. And we've heard from the UC Ag and Natural Resources that they see a new species enter the state about every 5 weeks. So certainly that is a problem for agriculture. It is also threatening to our natural lands as well. And those of you familiar with CDFA probably know that this is a major part of the work of CDFA is addressing pests as quickly as possible, and if possible, keeping them out of the state completely to begin with. So this section will cover the state's efforts under the Sustainable Pest Management Roadmap that was finalized last year, as well as the need for research and development of new tools and investments into technical assistance and training for integrated pest management. Next slide, and I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm running out of voice. Okay, the final chapter within this pillar is boosting biodiversity. Many of you know that the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis are very intertwined, and farmers are already doing a ton to support habitat on farm. In recent years, the state has provided grants to farmers to install habitat for pollinators through our pollinator habitat program at CDFA. And there are lots of examples of farms co-managing land for crops and species such as rice fields being used for waterfowl and salmon. There are other examples of possible actions that could be taken that might include policies that protect farmers who install habitat from litigation over species loss. And then finally, there's also the new frontier of below ground biodiversity to consider. Last year, CDFA published a framework for thinking about below ground biodiversity, and we know that there's a ton to do in that space as well. So yeah, on to the next slide, please.
Okay, we're moving into our third pillar. We've identified this as encouraging resilient agricultural practices. We have 4 key objectives under this pillar, and it's all about practices that can be enacted on a farm or ranch to build operational resilience, protect and bolster environmental health, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So objective 9 is all about enhancing practices which support clean air communities. And this section really looks at ways to reduce air pollutants from agricultural operations and practices, while also ensuring the health of surrounding communities and workers and meeting air quality standards. It's kind of a everything in one. But this section, we look at strategies that include actions on farm, new research related to air quality impacts associated with agricultural operations, and support for increasing access to equipment upgrades. Next slide. Next, we have advancing climate smart and healthy soils practices. These terms are used somewhat interchangeably, but in general, they just refer to practices that build soil organic matter, sequester carbon, provide resiliency benefits like increasing soil water holding capacity. In this chapter, we look at strategies and actions that will support healthy and resilient soil ecosystems and also meet state nature-based solution targets. These include promoting technical assistance for bolstering knowledge of these practices and ensuring successful implementation, and also creating and standardizing methodologies for measuring the impacts of these healthy soils practices over time. Next slide. Our last two chapters pertain to our dairy and ranching industries. In Chapter 11, we discuss strategies and actions to help promote resilient ranching and rangeland management. This includes strategies to promote multi-benefit rangeland management, conservation and restoration of rangelands, and also some enteric methane emissions reduction actions for animals in rangelands. Our final chapter, next slide. Our final chapter is dedicated to fostering a robust and environmentally friendly dairy industry while meeting our state methane emission goals. Highlighted strategies for this chapter include collaboration across sister agencies to research new methane reduction methods, increasing the adoption of current methane emission reduction technologies, and supporting new dairy waste utilization pathways. Okay, I'll pass it to Haley.
Great. So again, we are just asking, now that you've heard all about the chapters and some of the things within them, how well do you feel that these chapters capture the major issue areas? And then after this, I did put a slide in there so you can have a chance to say, any issues, or feel free to put it in the chat as we've been doing. Great. So we're getting upper 3.6 right now. Some people feel like we're missing something. Some people feel like we're straight on. So I think, yeah, any information you have about what we're missing, it's the time to hear it. So we'd love to kind of dive into that. Okay, I'm going to just go to the next slide to give people a minute to maybe just type in anything else you think we should know, whether it's a whole new category that you think we haven't fully mentioned, or just something that you would want to see within one of those categories. You can either put it here in Mentimeter or keep putting things in the chat. So maybe we'll give a minute or so just to give people a chance to think. And we will bring this up at the end as well, but the public comment period is open until November 7th. So this is not your only chance to provide feedback. We will go over at the end all the other ways to provide it, but to give you a preview, you can email. We have a community doc, which I'll run through at the end, in this workshop. So lots of different opportunities. So we have a question in here. Have we discussed carbon sequestration methods in this RSA? Virginia or Nina, you want to take that?
I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Certainly soil carbon. I think, what else did we touch on in here? Maybe biomass utilization, things like
Yeah, and we touch on it in a couple of different places. We're talking
that.
about resilience, but
Compost application.
It covers a couple of different things. We also talk about carbon markets and avenues in that place as well.
Great. So hearing about highlighting the intersection with support and collaboration with continued research, outreach documents to inspire and foster the next generation of awareness to pre-12 and school districts. There's some great things. Okay, great. Well, keep thinking of ideas, put anything in the chat, and we will continue on our way.
Okay, doke. So now we're going to get into our equity principles, and I guess we can just go to the next slide. So the idea here with these equity principles is to help our sister agency colleagues essentially think about the range of folks who might be interested in accessing resources for agriculture across the board when they maybe don't have as much familiarity with like the ecosystem, what makes things easier to access or not. And so we've got as an appendix a guide for helping state agencies develop programs and policies that are going to work for everybody, essentially. So, yeah, the intent is for us to help enable other agencies to consider these concepts and so the principles that we've included there on the screen describe. Sorry, I left my place in my notes. Describe the objective of each principle, a short description about what's included in that, a set of guiding questions for CDFA and other agencies to use, ways to help evaluate your programs and further customize them according to their needs. So let's go on to the next slide. So the first is financial viability. We want our programs to be accessible to people who want to participate, and sometimes there are financial barriers. So for example, it has been in the case in the past that say a program might only apply to people who own land versus people who lease it, which means that lessees wouldn't have access to that program. The second is technical assistance. So we know that adopting climate smart practices can be a financial risk. It can be scary, especially if you, haven't gotten a lot of training about it. Technical assistance to help ensure that people have access to programs and activities. And technical assistance has not necessarily always been included in all state programs related to agriculture, but we hope that we'll start seeing it much more. Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, our next two equity principles are accessibility and health and well-being. In accessibility, we're aiming for equitable access to state initiatives and trainings and resources. This can include working on language translations for people who speak languages other than English, or working on plain language documentation to really minimize jargon for improved comprehension. For health and well-being, we're really looking to center the well-being of our agricultural workforce in the pursuit of climate smart farm programs and policies. And this could look like ensuring access to proper protective equipment or technologies for on-farm work to mitigate impacts. Next slide. And our last two equity principles are cultural relevancy and accountability and transparency. With cultural relevancy, the objective is to ensure initiatives aimed at climate smart farming practices support culturally relevant farming practices, including traditional ecological knowledge. Lastly, it's important that initiatives have clear and transparent mechanisms for monitoring long-term implementation. So with accountability and transparency, this principle helps guide agencies to understand how to plan successful initiatives and also how to track the influence of their initiatives over time.
All right, so thinking about those equity principles and how maybe your experience with programs or policies, is there any other considerations that we can include? So this is all about kind of breaking down those barriers. So we've heard, I think, a few things in the chat that maybe can relate to this about, grant opportunities and helping small farmers. So I think that all kind of feeds into these equity principles. But if there's anything else that you think we're missing or other considerations we should include, we'd love to hear it. So we'll just pause here for a minute to see if anybody has any ideas or thoughts. I see in the chat, Madison said, established farmer program, not just for new farmers. Special considerations for farms under 500 acres, grants, as well as microloan opportunities. Market assistance and platforms. You're back, Nina. I think you went out for a second.
Well, yeah, I'm back. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. We stopped for a second and we restarted. All right. So I think at this point, maybe we can stop and just see generally. I have some next steps to go over as well. Maybe I'll just go over those real quick and then we can kind of open it up to if anybody has any questions or just wants to provide a comment. So I can turn it over. I don't know if do you want me to take this or one of you want to?
I think, were you going to show how to use the community document?
Yeah, I can do that. So
Yeah.
as I mentioned, there are a couple different ways to provide public comment. So it's open till November 7th. And so one of the ways is called Community Document, and that allows you to read and then embed comments right on the strategy. So I'll show you in a second how to work that on my screen. You can also download just a PDF of the strategy, read it, and email climate@cdfa.ca.gov to share any of your comments. You can also look, we have an executive summary that, I mean, I think a lot of it we probably just went over. And then if you have anyone else that you think would want to learn a bit more about the strategy, we have another one of these workshops on Tuesday from 9 to 10:30 a.m. So during the day. So I'm going to stop sharing. And so if you go to CDFA's website, just switch my screens around. Reshare. So if you go to the website, then you scroll down, there's some background information, and then these three ways to attend, a workshop, download, or visit Community Doc. So if I go to Community Doc, I'm already logged in. So basically you'll get to a screen and you will just have to put in your email and any password. And this is just to make it so that people, like robots and stuff can't get on it. So no need to remember your password or anything. You just have to log in with a free account. Once you're in, you should see this screen. So it provides a bit of information about the document. And then if you scroll down, you are able to see the strategy itself, and you can, mess with the zoom so you can see the whole document. And then as you click through, it will show you as you go. And then if you want to put a comment, you simply just click on it. You can add a comment, ask a question, or just like if you agree with something, and type in here whatever your comment is. If you'd like to see what other people have said, you can go up to this top right corner and see all comments so far. But besides that, you'll just see yours so that you can kind of read the document easier. So if you have any trouble with this, my email is here. You can email CDFA that same email, and we can help you out there. So it's pretty easy to kind of go through that, and allows you to leave comments as you're reading it. So I will stop sharing if I can find it.
And we should say, if you want to do the more traditional, send us a letter or an email, you're totally welcome to do that. I've used community docs before to comment on a Sacramento City plan, and it was really easy because you're basically sticking your comment on that part of it. So you're able to address the exact part that you want. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay, so I think now we would just like to hear from all of you. So we didn't know how many people would be here or want to speak. So So depending on how many people want to speak, we might ask for about a 2-minute limit. But if you want to speak, if you would please raise your hand, then we'll be able to gauge, what the demand on time is. We've got until 8 o'clock available, so should be significant time to hear from people. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, why don't we just get started and feel free to, let's see, I will allow you to talk. Why don't we start with Richard Perez? Okay, I think you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. Have there been strategies discussed about dual land use opportunities with renewable energy?
Um, I don't know if we like a kind of agrivoltaics type situation.
Yes.
I don't remember if that is in there off the top of my head. So if that's something you would like to see, we will make note. Are there other types of dual land use that you're interested in?
Yeah, we were part of a National Renewable Energies Laboratory cohort for agrivoltaics and distributed wind, and we think it could be a viable solution for some of the sustainable agriculture here on the Central Coast. So we're pushing an initiative that would actually drive those two dual land use opportunities to create a separate revenue stream for small organic farmers.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're happy to take that note now. And if you have further suggestions on, like how that should be implemented, what types of resources would be helpful for folks who want to do that, that would all be helpful information so we can figure out, where to put it in the strategy.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle right now is interconnection, because the um, investment-owned utilities is really kind of a strategy to keep community solar from being implemented, and that's what we'd like to see.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point you just bring up, that identifying obstacles is also really helpful for us. So I'm glad you said that way to trigger me to think about it that way.
Yeah, I'd be happy to participate in a focus group or anything that I can provide more details.
Great.
I represent about 20 organic minority-owned farms here in the Tri-County area of Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito.
Nice. That's my homeland. I'm from Salinas.
Oh yeah, right on. So that's really our initiative, is to try and create more opportunity through microclimates and no-tilling, carbon sequestration.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Richard. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, cool. Let's go on to Paul Ryan. You can go ahead and speak, Paul.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I reviewed the document a couple of times now, and I'll be working with other folks to respond to you either in uh, specific items or some general comments or letters. Um, a couple of things that I'm not quite clear on how to respond. Are you generally looking for current information we might be thinking about, or are we going to do a deep dive? Say, for instance, I reviewed the regulatory alignment, the CROW document, and so on, and I deal with ARB, South Coast, you guys, and Cal Recycle, and some of the other Cal EPA departments. And there seems to be a real need to realign things, particularly with FSMA and PSP, in relationship to what we have to do to comply. And then some of the databases that, say, for instance, CalRecycle and some and the air districts and air board
Yeah.
seem to match or cross what you guys are doing. Is there any discussion going on internally to streamline a lot of the information? Because it's going to get crazy if we don't.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for folks listening, what he's referring to is the Crow Report is a regulatory alignment pilot program that just was completed and released in September, where we we worked with a consultant who looked at 4 different policies, I believe, across I think it was EPA, water boards, and CDFA, and looked for opportunities for more streamlined regulation. And I think they came up with a series of, I think, 19 or something recommendations.
Right.
So yeah, this is really important to CDFA and the secretary. So I think we would be really interested in not only overarching thoughts about like things that are needed, but also if you have really specific ideas about improvements, like you're saying, like have your databases talk to each other, that would be super great to hear. We know that the amount of paperwork that farmers have to do is a real pain point. And if you know that there's, like most of my reporting happens with this agency or on this topic, calling those things to our attention so that we can focus on them would be super helpful.
Yeah, there's, for example, 1383 is with CalRecycle, and then the RDRS system has some of the information that could go into, say, like FSMA and PSP area regarding compost and manures, and it's going to be really interesting how we carry forward the on-farm composting issue, particularly with Neely's bill.
Yes. Yeah, we've been talking about that internally. Those bills just passed, so we're looking forward to trying to develop some guidance to make it more clear how these things work together, and especially to address FSMA, because another part of CDFA, of course, and that's the Food Safety Modernization Act, for those of you who might not know. Another huge part of CDFA is our Inspection Services Division, which is in charge of food safety and making sure that our food system is safe. So yeah, any kind of specific suggestions that you have on this topic is really important.
So yeah, I work through CAF, Inland Empire, then I'm work through USCC and also the Association of Compost Producers, as well as I'm a registered egg producer and so on. So I'm involved quite a bit. And so I wanted to make sure that what we produce is not just generalized, but offer up some real concrete things for you folks to consider.
Awesome. That would be really great. And yeah, you should definitely lean on your associations to do some of the legwork.
Yeah. Hey, it's going to be a big lift, I'll tell you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Are there other attendees who are interested in making comments? I am scrolling for raised hands. Okay. Well, we'll give it a couple minutes in case you If there's any slides you want us to read, happy to do that.
Yeah, otherwise, if there's no more comments, then thank you so much for attending. And yeah, use the resources that we have. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, thank you so much for spending your evening learning about the resilience strategy. We'll stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any other questions, but otherwise, yeah, have a great night.